You know, being a parent these days can feel like you've been dropped into a new country with an old, useless map. All the landmarks are gone, the roads have been rerouted, and it seems like everyone you meet is giving you conflicting directions. So in this explainer, we're going to try and piece together a new map, one that actually helps you navigate the very real, very modern world of raising a kid. And let's just start right here, with this incredibly honest quote from a mother. It just perfectly captures a feeling that so many parents have, whether they say it out loud or not. It's this deep personal fear that comes from just not knowing, a fear of the unknown, of not having the right answers. And that's really the emotional heart of the journey we're going on today. Because let's be real, it really does feel like a maze, doesn't it? There's this crushing pressure to get everything perfect, and you're just constantly bombarded with advice from everywhere, and half of it contradicts the other half. So this first part is really just about acknowledging that feeling, that it's okay to feel a little lost. So to find our way out of that maze, we have to start by looking inward. I mean, really inward, inside the incredible, super complex, and just unbelievably fast-developing brain of a child. If we can get a handle on that biological foundation, everything that happens on the outside starts to make a whole lot more sense. Okay, let's start with a number that it kind of stops you in your tracks. 90%. According to researchers at Harvard, a whopping 90% of your child's brain architecture is built by the time they turn 5. Think about that. The foundation for their entire life gets laid down in those first handful of years. And if you're wondering how that happens so fast, well, get this. In those early years, their brain is forming over 1 million new neural connections every single second. It is a literal explosion of growth. It's just wow. And it really shows you how sensitive and important this period is. So that leads to a big question, right? What happens when you introduce a very modern thing like screen time into that biological explosion? Well, a big study in JAMA Pediatrics decided to find out. They followed almost 2,500 moms and their kids, tracking screen time and checking in on development at ages 2, 3, and 5. And what they found was pretty clear. There was a direct link. The more screen time kids had when they were 2 and 3, the poorer they performed on developmental tests when they were 3 and 5. So it shows that these external things we do have a real, measurable impact on all that critical wiring happening inside their heads. So that's a perfect jumping off point for our next section. We're going to zoom out now from just one thing like screen time to look at the whole environment a child grows up in. Because, as we're about to see, access and opportunity are definitely not created equal. Here's a concept you might not have heard of before, a book desert. And this isn't just about not having a library nearby. We're talking about whole communities where it is incredibly hard to find any age-appropriate books, nothing to borrow, and often nothing you can even buy. And when you see the numbers, it is just staggering. Research has found that in a typical middle-income neighborhood, there are about 13 books for every one child. But in low-income neighborhoods, that number plummets to just one single book for every 300 children. That's not a gap, that's a chasm. And this quote from researcher Susan Newman just hits the nail on the head. We all know that early literacy is so important for brain development. But how is a kid supposed to build that foundation if the building blocks, the books themselves, simply aren't there? Okay, so we've looked at the world outside the home, and now we need to step inside and look at the dynamics within the family itself. Because sometimes the pressures of life can really blur the lines and create a situation for a child that is really complicated and, honestly, pretty damaging. There's a clinical term for this. It's called parentification. It's this idea of a role reversal, where a child is basically forced to take on adult responsibilities and act as a caregiver, either for their own parents or for their brothers and sisters. And it tends to show up in two different ways. You've got instrumental parentification. That's about doing the physical stuff, like cooking, cleaning, even managing money. But then there's emotional parentification, and this one can be even heavier. This is when the child has to be the parent's therapist, their mediator, their rock, carrying all these adult emotional burdens. And to really understand what this feels like, just listen to this person's experience from a Reddit forum. They make it so clear. This isn't just about helping out with chores or babysitting for a bit. It's a deep, constant responsibility for the emotional stability of the entire family. And that leaves a mark. So you can see how all these things, whether they're developmental, environmental, or happening inside the family, they can force parents into a whole new role, the advocate. Suddenly, you're not just a parent, you're a fighter,
trying to navigate these huge systems like public education that just weren't built with your kid in mind.
And it's so important to understand that this fight is pushing back against a really dark history. I mean, we had ugly laws that literally made it illegal for people with disabilities to be seen in public. We had states passing eugenics laws. The Supreme Court even upheld forced sterilization. This idea that some kids just don't belong is deeply, deeply woven into these systems.
So if you're going to be an advocate, the first thing you have to do is learn the lingo. It's like a whole new language of acronyms. And a really big one is the IEP, the Individualized Education Plan. This is a legal document, a contract, that spells out exactly what support a child in special education is supposed to get.
But here's where it gets so frustrating for so many people. Even if you know the language, there's this huge disconnect. Parents will say, "My child is clearly struggling," but the school says they don't qualify for help because their grades are still okay. They see behavior plans that look like they're rewarding the bad behavior. It just feels like the system waits for a kid to fail before it finally steps in to help. So what can you do? This part is crucial. You have the power to get the ball rolling. It all starts with putting your request for an evaluation in writing. Not a phone call, not a conversation in the hallway. Put it in writing. State your concerns, say you want an evaluation, and know your rights. By law, the school has to respond. That's your first, most powerful move.
Okay, wow, we have covered a lot of ground, haven't we? We've looked at brain science, book deserts, family roles, the school system. So now let's put it all together and figure out how this new map helps you actually chart your own course.
And if there's one central idea to take away from all of this, it's this. So often, the child isn't the burden, the system is. And when you understand the map, when you understand the biology in their brain, the environment around them, and the bureaucratic rules you have to play by, you stop being someone who's lost. You become the guide.
You know, the journey of parenting is never a straight line, is it? It's a whole series of choices and turns and discovering new paths. So the question we'll leave you with is this. Now that you've got a better look at the map, what's the very first landmark you're going to navigate toward?